Spinal cord. Complete explanation. What is the spinal cord? The spinal cord is a long, cylindrical structure of the central nervous system. It connects the brain with nerves throughout the body and helps carry sensory and motor information. Location of the spinal cord. The spinal cord lies inside the vertebral canal, formed by the vertebrae. It begins where the medulla oblongata continues through the foramen magnum and, in adults, usually ends around the L1-L2 vertebral level. Protection of the spinal cord. The spinal cord is protected by the vertebral column, meninges, and cerebrospinal fluid. The three meninges are the dura mater, arachnoid mater, and pia mater. CSF provides cushioning and helps protect nervous tissue. Regions of the spinal cord. The spinal cord is divided into 5 regions: cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and coccygeal. These regions correspond to different groups of spinal nerves supplying various parts of the body. Spinal nerves. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. They include 8 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 1 coccygeal pair. These nerves connect the spinal cord with muscles, skin, and other tissues. Cervical enlargement. The cervical region contains an enlargement called the cervical enlargement. It is associated with nerves supplying the upper limbs, including the shoulder, arm, forearm, and hand. Lumbosacral enlargement. The lower part of the spinal cord has a lumbosacral enlargement. It contains nerve cells and pathways associated with the lower limbs and pelvic region. Conus medullaris. The spinal cord gradually becomes narrower at its lower end, forming the conus medullaris. In adults, it generally ends around the L1-L2 level. Below this point, nerve roots continue downward inside the vertebral canal. Cauda equina, the collection of long nerve roots below the conus medullaris, is called the cauda equina, meaning horse's tail. These nerve roots travel downward before leaving through their respective openings in the vertebral column. Filum terminale. The filum terminale is a thin extension of connective tissue associated with the pia mater. It helps anchor the lower end of the spinal cord within the vertebral canal. Cross-section of the spinal cord. When viewed in cross-section, the spinal cord has gray matter in the center and white matter surrounding it. The gray matter has a characteristic butterfly or H-shaped appearance. Gray matter. Gray matter contains many neuron cell bodies, dendrites, and supporting cells. It is involved in processing and coordinating nervous information within the spinal cord. Posterior horn. The posterior or dorsal horn of gray matter is mainly associated with sensory information entering the spinal cord. Signals related to touch, pain, and temperature are processed through pathways connected with this region. Anterior horn. The anterior or ventral horn contains the cell bodies of many motor neurons. These neurons send signals through spinal nerves to skeletal muscles and help produce movement. Lateral horn. A lateral horn is particularly prominent in the thoracic and upper lumbar spinal cord. It contains neurons associated with the autonomic nervous system, especially sympathetic functions. White matter. White matter contains bundles of myelinated nerve fibers. These fibers form pathways that carry information up toward the brain or down from the brain to the spinal cord. Ascending pathways. Ascending tracks carry sensory information from the body toward the brain. They transmit information such as pain, temperature, touch, vibration, and body position. Descending pathways. Descending tracks carry motor commands from the brain toward the spinal cord. These signals ultimately influence motor neurons that control muscles and body movements. Dorsal root. The dorsal root carries mainly sensory information toward the spinal cord. It contains a dorsal root ganglion, where the cell bodies of many sensory neurons are located. Ventral root. The ventral root carries motor signals away from the spinal cord. It contains fibers from motor neurons that control skeletal muscles and other motor functions. Formation of a spinal nerve. The dorsal and ventral roots join to form a mixed spinal nerve. Therefore, a spinal nerve can carry both sensory information toward the CNS and motor information away from it. Reflex action. The spinal cord is an important center for reflexes. A reflex is a rapid, automatic response to a stimulus. For example, withdrawing your hand quickly after touching something very hot can involve a spinal reflex. Reflex arc. A typical reflex arc involves a receptor, sensory neuron, integration center, motor neuron, and effector. The signal can be processed within the spinal cord before the brain becomes consciously aware of the stimulus. Sensory function. The spinal cord receives sensory information from different parts of the body. This includes information about pain, temperature, touch, pressure, and body position. Motor function. The spinal cord helps transmit motor commands from the brain to muscles. It therefore plays an essential role in voluntary movement, posture, and coordinated motor activity. Autonomic function. Parts of the spinal cord participate in controlling involuntary functions through the autonomic nervous system. These include functions involving blood vessels, sweating, and certain internal organs. Blood supply. The spinal cord receives blood mainly through the anterior spinal artery and posterior spinal arteries, along with additional segmental arteries. An important vessel supplying much of the lower spinal cord is the artery of Adamkiewicz. Clinical importance. Damage to the spinal cord can interfere with communication between the brain and body. Depending on the location and severity of injury, it may affect sensation, movement, reflexes, and autonomic functions below the affected level. Conclusion. The spinal cord is both a major communication pathway and an important reflex center. Its organized arrangement of gray matter, white matter, nerve roots, and ascending and descending tracts allows the nervous system to receive information, process certain responses, and control body functions. Subscribe and follow Bioenigma X, Javesh for more biology, anatomy, and exam-focused educational content.